At the time, however, India had a controlled economy, and as a developing nation, it was considered important to regulate oil prices to protect the interests of the common man. The net result was the creation of the Administered Pricing Mechanism, or the APM. Hello and welcome to the Secretariat. We are back this week to have a look at everyone's favorite bugbear, prices, specifically prices of petrol and diesel and also cooking gas for our kitchens. You may have wondered often why you read in the papers that oil prices are high in global markets, but they are much lower here. Or the reverse, they may be higher here when international prices are low. To understand the reason for this dichotomy, we need to go back several decades and understand the evolution of the oil pricing system in India. It was in the mid-70s that foreign oil companies were nationalized. Our very own Indian Oil Corporation had already been established in 1959. So the country developed a network of oil refining and marketing companies. At the time, however, India had a controlled economy. And as a developing nation, it was considered important to regulate oil prices to protect the interests of the common man. The net result was the creation of the Administered Pricing Mechanism, or the APM. It was a complex system of cross-subsidizing various petroleum products, with the funds being put in what were known as oil pool accounts. Basically, it meant that the oil companies had to follow the dictates of the government as far as pricing of products was concerned. With the liberalization of the economy in the 90s, it was recognized that the national oil companies, as well as the new private sector ones, needed to have the freedom to fix prices to become more efficient and ensure their profitability. So it was finally in 2002 that the APM was formally dismantled. But government control was reimposed after a while. It was ultimately only in June 2010 that petrol prices were made market-linked. This was followed by diesel in October 2014. Other petroleum products used by industry were also shifted to market-driven pricing. Oil companies moved to the globally accepted system of daily price revisions in June 2017. The only products that continued to be regulated were liquefied petroleum gas, LPG, or what is known as cooking gas, along with kerosene. The reason being that these are subsidized to make them affordable to weaker sections of society, and these are supplied through the public distribution system. Now you will ask, if the APM was dismantled, how do we still find that domestic pump prices vary from crude oil prices in world markets? To understand this issue, we must note that petroleum products are a huge source of revenue for the government. So when international prices fall very low, there is a tendency to raise excise duties so that the exchequer can mop up higher revenues without altering the retail price. Now that may seem unfair, as we are deprived of getting products like petrol and diesel at cheaper rates. But on the other hand, when international prices shoot up, like they did at the onset of the Ukraine war, domestic prices do not spike at the same time. Instead, excise duties are cut, so consumers do not face steep increases in pump prices. This may not be a perfect version of a market-linked price system, but for a developing economy that needs to contain inflation, this is actually a workable solution. It is also true that in order to maintain price stability, the government sometimes informally urges companies to maintain prices at affordable levels, even though this may mean selling at a loss. This is again not an ideal situation, But it does mean that the common man is cushioned from any volatility that takes place in international markets. Of course, the government then has to compensate the oil companies for their short-term losses. In the future, it is clear that pricing of petroleum products will continue to be linked to international markets. Till the country remains an emerging economy, however, it cannot opt for a completely market-driven system. Fuel prices will continue to need both formal and informal interventions to protect those that remain below the poverty line. Thanks for watching. Do tune in next week for another look at policies that shape the nation.